This is the countdown for this new interview in Fabulous with Fabio. Be ready, everybody. And this is the countdown: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody. This is Fabio Marques, president of the International Excellence Society. And this is Fabulous with Fabio, where I invite fabulous human beings to be here with me, sharing with us their insights, their knowledge, their inspiration, so we can make this world a better place. And I only invite guests that I know can handle, because this is raw, this is authentic, there's no cuts, no post-production. This is raw and authentic as life is. So my guest today is Dr. Helen Turnbull. She is the thought leader about unconscious bias, diversity, and inclusion. She's been all over the world helping companies achieve awards and, of course, change, reality in their companies, so everybody can feel loved, appreciated, and respected as human beings. So without further ado, Dr. Helen Turnbull, welcome to Fabulous with Fabio.
Thank you, Fabio. You have given me such an introduction. I'm fully awake now and ready to go.
Right. No, we are very happy to have you here. I know your calendar is full and it's so hard to have this moment with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with our audience everything you can, so people can understand better this so important topic: diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. And of course, I want them to know more about you, because there are so many phony and fake gurus out there, and I only invite real, authentic, legit people here in the show. So I want my audience to know you better, not only in the professional level, but also who you are. Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that. Yes, thank you.
Perfect, perfect. So the first thing I want to know is how you became such a fabulous professional in this area of diversity and inclusion. Tell us a little bit more about your path until this point.
I think it's interesting that we teach what we want to learn. And I've always been very keen on the issue of inclusion and belonging. It is, I think, I was just listening to a speech by, I think, the president of Northwestern University, who talked about, if you're looking for the smartest person in the room, look for the kindest person in the room. If you're looking for an idiot, look for the person who's most cruel, right? And I've always wanted to help people to see what it would take, not just for them to feel they belong, but for the group to feel a sense of community. And I've always said that if you've experienced community, you'll always know when you don't have it. And so that sense of being in a group but not quite feeling that you belong there, it kind of, you might not be able to put your finger on it, but you know. And so my work over the years has been about inclusion and helping people to look at how we're not seeing each other. And I suppose, where did the journey start? I think probably, Fabio, it started when I came to the United States. Clearly, for your audience, they'll pick up that I'm originally from Scotland. And I came here in 1980, and I suddenly experienced the feeling of not belonging. I knew that I was here. I knew I spoke the same language, at least I thought I did. And yet I didn't feel grounded. I didn't feel I belonged. And I went to a workshop in Bethel, Maine, that was run by the National Training Laboratories, NTL Institute for Applied Behavioral Science. Today, I am the chair of the board of that organization. But when I went there in 1986, I believe, I learned there about the differences in people, their different stories, their different diversities, their different journeys to get to where they were. And it really opened my eyes, it opened my mind, and it opened my heart to the idea that you can't just, I mean, this seems obvious, but it's not, that you can't just look at people and assume that you think you know who they are or what they bring to the table. I saw a graphic on Facebook the other day of a giant circle with a tiny dot in it. And it said, if you think you know people, this is all you know about them, is the tiny dot, right? So all of us have got these complex stories. And I guess I became fascinated and passionate about the idea that I could help people by learning how to bring a group together in a way where everyone's voices were heard. And that's the important piece. I believe, and well, let me say it two ways. I believe that most people feel they're not being heard these days. We live with too much noise around us, whether it's you with your smartphone, your head down, not looking at the people you're with, your smartphone on the table at dinner, and just way too much noise. I was in an international conference this morning that started at 5:30, and one of the speakers, he was brilliant, but he basically said that the internet has moved us away from, I mean, it's a great asset, right? What would we do without it? We wouldn't be talking like this today. But the internet has moved us away from our sense of humanity with each other. And I think that we need to slow down in a sense and really see each other. Really, if you're in the room together, pay attention to the people who are there. Be interested in their stories. And I think all too often we're not. I think the other piece that, because you asked about me authentically, is that I've been struggling recently to try and discover why I'm having a couple of health problems, particularly causing shortness of breath and anxiety. And in struggling with that, I've come to the conclusion that sometimes I'm walking on eggshells around people, that I don't feel psychologically safe with them. And that in itself is not just a trigger, but a motivator to keep doing this work. That's a long answer to your question, but
no, it's a complete and a thorough answer. So, this is so important. I really believe that there's the obvious, right, bias that people have, and the not so obvious bias that people have, right? And as you're saying, people are so in a hurry to judge and label other people. They don't really pay attention. They don't really care. They're not really curious. They're not listening. They're not paying attention. And people are just in this, I don't know, they like to judge and label and give people names, right? And try to read people as if they were the experts of reading people. And I believe the essence of being really human is respecting how much you don't know about somebody else until you really dig in, right? And try to understand and live with that person and talk to that person, really ask questions and really listen. So what you do is so important, because we have to go beyond this obvious bias that people have about color, about country, and really even within the same group, people in the same city that were born in the same city, we have so much unconscious bias, right? Just because if the person is beautiful, probably she's not intelligent. She just got where she is because she was beautiful. What is that, right? So this is not so obvious, but it's always there. If we don't pay attention to ourselves and how we are judging people and labeling people, we end up, practicing unconscious bias even without knowing it, right?
Yeah.
So I believe everybody should be very curious about another human being and really willing to listen carefully and understand before judging or labeling anybody. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's inherent in all of us that we do judge and that we have to catch it. I talk about unconscious bias, lives at the back of your neck, and you have to get it to the edge of your shoulder so that you can see it in your peripheral vision. So that when you catch the judgment here, you can think, uh-oh, hold on a minute. And I operate on the premise that I don't have the privilege of knowing other people's story, but I know they have a story. And if I did have the privilege, I would get to know them better, and I would make more allowances and give them more space. And in a sense, I learned that from the thousands. I mean, you said at the beginning, I've spoken in 22 countries. I've traveled all over the world. I have 6 million air miles. And in all of that time, I've been doing diversity and inclusion work for different client systems. And there are times when you go into a group and you take a look around and you think, that person's going to be a problem. Well, where did that come from, right? And so I've learned over time that the person that I already decided might be a problem isn't a problem and has the most compelling story to tell. And the minute you hear the story, you see them differently. And wouldn't it be great if, we don't walk around with a list of our stories pinned to our lapel, but if we did, I think we'd feel differently about each other. It's driven by fear often. It's driven by conditioning. It's also driven by divisiveness. And we live in a very, very divisive world at the moment, where it's taking extra effort for the good people to show up and to say, I'm not going to live in that space. So.
Yeah. As professional speakers, probably you have experienced that as well. When I go to a client, sometimes they come to me, listen, before you start, let me point out to you the problem people, right, in this group. I say, no, don't tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to know, right? Because I don't want your unconscious bias into myself now. And many, many times, by not knowing the problematic people, I treat them with the same kindness, with the same respect as everybody else, and they turn out to be not a problem anymore. And sometimes the client goes, well, what did you do? You changed that person. No, I just didn't treat that person as you would expect me to treat them.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
This is so cool. And I really like when that happens, because I don't know who are the problematic people. And then by the end, the client comes to me, hey, you have changed that person. No, that's not the point. So this is so important. If we could give everybody the same clean slate, right? The same chance for them to show us who they are, actually show us their story, right? We could understand them much, much better. I want to ask you one technical or maybe a strategic question. You already gave us like a picture how we can control our unconscious bias, right? By taking it here on our shoulder instead of the back of our neck, so we can see it and we can realize this is happening. What are the other techniques you can use, or what kind of questions can you ask someone to help yourself see that person without any unconscious bias, if that is at all possible?
So first of all, I would say that's not possible, only in as much as we've all got unconscious bias, and it's never going to go away. So the first thing is to accept that, rather than because people can be defensive. I'm not unconsciously biased. I'm not biased at all. Or I'm not racist. I'm not sexist. And so I think the first thing is for us to accept that we are. It lives in our body. And I know if it's living in mine, it's living in yours, right? So I'm not free of bias just because I teach this work. I have to catch it all the time. I have to catch the stories in my head. I was at my chiropractor a little while ago, and he said he won't be here next week. And I said, okay, then I won't be here. He said, no, so-and-so can see you. And I went, who? And it was a woman who sits at the front desk. And I thought, she's not a chiropractor, she's the receptionist. And apparently he's been training her and she's a chiropractor. But I came home thinking, I don't want to do that. No, I'll just skip a week. And so we all have these stories. She might be fabulous, but I wasn't sure I was going to give her a chance, right? So that no exceptions, we all have the bias. The other piece of that is, as a tip, is to catch yourself. It is to recognize that a lot of our biases are coming out of fear. So we've either been conditioned to be afraid of these people, or we've decided based on an incident that's happened to us to be afraid of these people. And it can be things like people who are overweight and don't look fit. I remember interviewing a very senior leader in an organization in Australia, and his unconscious bias assessment, because I had designed an unconscious bias assessment tool, showed that he didn't like overweight and unfit people. And I thought, well, this is going to be fun. because I'm overweight. And the minute I walked into the room, I knew he was going to look at me and think, this woman's overweight. And so I addressed it when we got to that point in his assessment. I said, well, what do you think of me? And he was a bit taken aback. And he said, well, okay. I admit when you walked in, I had my thoughts about it. He said, but my mother-in-law's overweight and I love her. So he deflected the question a little bit. And he came around to deciding I was smart, even although I was overweight. But he still had the bias, right? So I think what I'm saying, Fabio, is give yourself permission to know that you're an imperfect human being, that you do have biases. And your work is to work on these biases. That's why I say catch it. And you will catch it if you pay attention to it. You know, when you decide you want to buy a red car, you see red cars everywhere. So if I can convince you that you've got all this bias and it's going to pop up, it's going to go from the back of your neck to your mouth if you're not careful. And so that's how having it here allows us to catch it. But the first thing really is to accept that you've got it. My first red flag in any workshop is someone who says, I'm not biased or I'm not racist. And I think, oh, yes, you are. Now let's do the work to help you see that, you know.
Now, this is so wise and so simple at the same time. Recognize we are imperfect human beings. Recognize you have unconscious bias. No matter if you like accepting it or not, we do have. And the best way to minimize its impact is really pay attention. Assume, yeah, we have it. Let's catch it, right? Before it causes any damage. Because if we try to deny you have it, then it's going to really cause any damage. So this is so powerful. And everybody watching, please, simplicity is wise, right? So when you listen to something that's simple, but at the same time so powerful, take notes because you cannot be surprised negatively by something that you should know because it's so simple. We all have unconscious bias. We all have this judgmental thinking. We need to be aware, accept it. It is there. We have to catch it so we can become better human beings and, of course, build better society together. Great. If you can now, Dr. Helen, please share with us. You don't worry if it's going to happen or not, okay? Let's dream freely here. Let's imagine you can dream the wildest dream, right? How you would like the world to be. How would you communicate or share this dream with us? Okay, your aspirations for the future, how you would see things happening if, let's say, if everybody could really be aware of unconscious bias and fight it in a good way so we can be more diverse, have more inclusion in the world. What would be the dream?
Yeah. So a lot of things actually, but the biggest part of the dream would be that people would want to be in conversation about this, that they would hire people like myself to begin to talk about it and how it can benefit them, the quality of their life, the quality of the relationships, the quality of the business, the bottom line of the business, because it's got tremendous exponential value. But we're moving in the wrong direction right now. So as you know, and I'm from Scotland but live in the United States, is right now there's a move to banish diversity and inclusion work. And that's just really regressive. And it distresses people like me who passionately care about this work. So my dream would be that that's not the case, that people are embracing it and are not seeing it as we're going too far. The issues of oppression, Fabio, haven't gone away. If anything, they're getting worse. And so do we have work to do? Absolutely. And you know, somebody said to me, and I'm not young anymore, right? But I don't consider that I'm old either. And I've considered that I've got years of work still to do and want to be able to do it. So part of my dream is to be out there working with groups, helping them to see the value of us coming together in a productive and forgiving space where people can feel they belong, where people can benefit from the conversation and not be saying things like, why don't they speak English? I mean, from you speak more than one language. I speak one language fluently and other languages not enough to find my way around any major city in the world. Shame on me, right? I got 7 out of 100 for French at school because I didn't think it was necessary. And today, I wish I spoke French fluently. I don't. And yet, I share that story to say too many people think that if you're speaking another language, then you're in the wrong. And I'm like, except when they go on vacation to another country, and then they're okay with it. But the minute they come home, it's like, oh, why are they? So we need to catch that kind of stuff. And so my dream would be that for at least the next 10 years, that I have a meaningful voice in this world. I know that I do exceptional work with groups. I know I do. And I want to continue to do that because it matters. I really do believe that over the years, I actually don't know how many lives I've touched, but I know I've touched lives. And I know I've touched them in a way that's made them think and that's changed the way they think about other people. I was working with a client in Arizona a few years ago, and I'd gone to the restroom, and a woman walked in and she said, I remember you. She said, I was in one of your workshops last year. And she said, you changed my relationship with my son. And I said, oh. She said, I wasn't getting along with him. And something you said in the workshop, I went home that night and I listened to him for the first time. And it changed everything. And I was so touched by that here's a complete stranger who remembered me a year later, and I've made a difference in the relationship with her son. That's huge. If I can do that every time I work with a group, that is priceless to me, Fabio.
I got goosebumps with this story because this is so, so powerful. A lot of people think, and this is another unconscious bias they have, that this is a topic only for corporations or groups in society, but it happens inside your own home, with your kids, with your spouse. You may at this very moment be treating your family member with unconscious bias. Right. Like teenagers don't know anything. Teenagers are always rebel. They always create problems. Why, right? So this is so powerful. It's not only about team building. Unconscious bias can affect leadership, sales, customer service, every little piece of our life. Yep. In every workshop I deliver to my clients, leadership, negotiation, sales, whatever, I always have unconscious bias a topic in there because this happens in every aspect of our life. This is a human facet, right? Right. That is so important. So everybody should be listening to your interview right now and should be really reflecting in all situations they have faced where they probably, without knowing, they allowed unconscious bias to affect their judgment and to stop them from listening, stop them from be curious, stop them from asking questions just because they already knew something about somebody, right?
Yes. Yeah. Or they took one look at somebody and decided that this is not for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe because of the tattoo, because of the piercing, because of the color, because of the age, because of the color of their eyes, whatever.
Hair, right? Whatever. Right?
And we need to be aware. Self-awareness is key to fight unconscious bias. And I really hope everybody keep listening to experts like yourself so they open their eyes, right? And open their ears and start really listening to people and listening to people's stories and before judging, trying to understand.
The name of my book is The Illusion of Inclusion. That was also the name of my TED Talk, as you know. And so what I actually believe, and I usually start my keynotes with, I know you believe you behave inclusively, but what if you really don't? What if it's actually true that your brain is hardwired for selfishness and similarity and not for diversity and inclusion? Because I believe that that's where we start. And it goes back to something you said earlier about us being, in a sense, territorial. It is that I'm protecting my space, whether it's my home or the seat I'm sitting in right now. You can't have this chair, it's my chair. even if I'm in the conference room and the chair belongs to the hotel, right? That we're fundamentally territorial. And what that does is it causes us to keep our guard up. And as we keep our guard up, we're keeping people out. Now, I'm not suggesting, because I'm not naive, that you're going to want to let everybody you meet in. There simply are people that you're not going to resonate with. There are people you're not going to get along with. But I am suggesting that, especially if you're in a leadership position, that you need to catch these biases because they're influencing not just your hiring decisions, they're influencing how people feel who are working with you. I've had 2 clients talk to me recently about hiring women or hiring ethnic minorities in the United Kingdom, and talking about the fact that they're losing people. They're losing women after 3 years. They're losing ethnic minorities. So it's a revolving door. And the question is why? What's happening? They're being hired because they're diverse and because they're competent, but they're leaving because they don't feel they belong. They're leaving because they don't feel their voices are heard. And so it's not so much, can you hire for diversity? It's what do you do once people get there? I think we hire for diversity and manage for similarity. So you come in and I hire you to value your difference. And then I say, no, Fabio, you have to be like this.
Yeah, you don't know anything about our culture. You don't speak.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. This is so true and so serious at the same time. You're absolutely right. I see many corporations and companies in general just hiring to fulfill the quota, right, of diversity and inclusion, but they don't treat people in an inclusion way. Like, I want to hear you, I want to listen to you, I want to learn from you. They really, in a day-to-day routines, they're just allowing those people to be there, but they're not giving those people the same importance or space to express themselves as they could.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I see also other thing going on many times. So many companies are so focused, right, on appearing to be diversity and inclusion welcoming, right? Then sometimes they even go all to the other extreme, and they only listen to the different people they just hired, and they start right, I don't know, shutting down other people there just because they're normal in their judgment. They're normal people. We don't want to listen to them anymore. Just only listen to the diverse people. What's that? Diversity and inclusion means treat everybody with respect, give everybody the freedom to speak, to express themselves. And let's learn with everybody and create something even better, because we're collecting all those experiences, right? But it's so hard to do, right?
I think you've got your finger on the pulse of something very important that's been happening increasingly. And sadly, we're seeing it manifest in quite unpleasant ways in the country at the moment. It is the idea that when we talk about, and that's why inclusion and belonging are so important to me, because when you only talk about diversity, you start to separate people out. But if you, and that's the key, is yes, we want diversity, but we want all diversity to be included. And that includes what you're referring to as normal, but what I would say is the dominant culture. So whether it's, if you're looking at sexual orientation, the dominant culture is heterosexual. If you're looking at gender, the dominant culture is male, etc. So when you start to exclude the views of the dominant culture, they start to feel my voice doesn't matter. And if they express the fact that their voice doesn't matter, the diverse group says to them, well, what about me? My voice hasn't mattered in years. And now what you've got is more division. And that I feel quite strongly about that. That's why I do my work the way I do it, because I really want everyone to have a voice. I want everyone to feel included and respected. And again, you're not going to like everybody, Fabio. There's people in my world that I don't like, and I prefer not to be around them. But nevertheless, I do understand the importance of the stories. And I certainly understand that dynamic you're talking about. And it's not necessarily a healthy one. So for me, the real work is around belonging and inclusion.
Yeah. I was listening to Morgan Freeman the other day, you know, Morgan Freeman, the
Mhm.
actor, right? And he's so clear in his head is so clear. He says, if you want me to feel treated no with absolute respect, stop referring to me as diversity. Look into my soul, see who I am. Don't see my skin color, see who I am as a human being, right? So and don't treat me as different, treat me as equal, right? So and this is so important, and I believe as I was, of course, I was joking about normal people. You have the adequate term for that, the dominant culture, dominant, right? Uh, anything, but we really need to true diversity and inclusion. True inclusion would be, as you're saying, that stop with the differences. Let's learn from everybody. Let's respect everybody equally. Let's give everybody the voice so they can speak up, they can be listened to, they can make a difference, right? In every situation they are, without creating new divisions, right? And
So,
based
so
on history or based on revenge or based on, I don't know what else, right?
And here's the challenge is because when you use the word normal, it tweaked me a little bit, and I'm like, no, it's not normal.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, correct me, please, correct me. We are all learning.
it, it is the issue of the dynamic of dominant and subordinated groups. Over the years, I've had participants say, we just need to treat everybody alike and stop talking about this. Now, here's the problem, is if we just treat people as individuals, yes, we'll hear their individual story, but then we're denying the fact that people are treated differently because of their group identity, right? So women are treated differently because of their group identity. Decisions are made about women's lives by men, and certainly we've had examples of that in the country, in the US recently, that are not healthy for women. And so
Right.
we can't just get to know the individual woman and say, she's fabulous and I really accept her and include her, because systemically there's something else going on,
You're
right?
right.
So the bias and the oppression is alive and not well. And so therefore we have to do the work of looking at each of these groups. Where I depart from some of my colleagues in doing this work is I want the voice of the dominant culture groups to still be in the conversation. I don't want to say to you, as a white male, as a Latino male, you need to be quiet right now because I only want to hear from the women. I don't want to say to white people, you need to be quiet. I only want to hear from people of color. Now, there are opportunities to do that in the work. But in the end, at the end of the day, if we can't allow everyone bringing all of themselves and their social identities to the table to feel heard, to feel not judged, then we're not doing the work. I mean, just don't call yourself an inclusion or unconscious bias consultant if you're only interested in helping one group.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, this, ladies and gentlemen, this is why Dr. Helen Turnbull is here with us. You know, uh, very different from many, many, many gurus out there. She really knows what she's talking about when she's talking about diversity, inclusion, and conscious bias. Pay attention, take notes, because we're learning a lot here, and we are addressing real problems we still face in the world, not only in the United States, in the world. I come from Brazil. I experienced both sides, situations where I was the one everybody would like to listen to, and situations where I was the one nobody would listen to. So we know that the healthy way to really treat this matter is helping people first recognize there is unconscious bias in all of us. We need to catch it. We need to be aware. We need to be alert all the time, and we need to be willing to listen everybody who's got a voice, right? So this is the best way. It's always going to be hard, as we're saying here. The more we talk about it, sometimes we feel like we're not really progressing in humankind, but we still fighting. Dr. Helen will still fight. I will still fight. Everybody that has this understanding that we need to grow and evolve as human beings, we will still fight until we get some progress. And as she was saying, Dr. Helen, it was saying here, if she touches one life, it's worth our life work, right?
Yeah.
So let's keep moving. Share with us one thing. I'm going to give you a challenge now, Dr. Helen, a challenge, all right?
Okay.
Let's see, you are in this big convention, and you have, you're going to speak to two different audiences, all right? One is an audience of 1,000 leaders.
Mhm.
And the other, in another room, you have an audience of 10,000 subordinates. They're not leaders, they're individual contributors, right? And they are, all of them are working in corporations, right? They are in dealing with all those kind of things. Let's say you have just 1 minute to address the 1,000 leaders, and you want them to really stop and think seriously about how much they know about inclusion, unconscious bias, whatever. And then you're going to leave that room. You're going to speak for 1 minute only for that people. And then you're going to leave them thinking. And you go to the other room, speak to 10,000 individual contributors. They're fighting to, to be heard, to have their voices heard, and to speak up, whatever. And you have also 1 minute to address that audience, trying to give them direction, inspiration, whatever they need to deal more effectively with all this situation. All right. So let's start with the leaders. So I'm going to time you. I'm going to time you. 1 minute. You're a professional speaker, certified speaking professional by the National Speaker Association and so on. So I know I can challenge you with that. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this with the leaders. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, go.
So I know you think you behave inclusively, but what if you really don't? What if it's true that your brain is hardwired for selfishness and similarity and not for diversity and inclusion? And what if it's true that if I could give you a 10% improvement in your bottom line on return on investment, would you be interested?
All right, 30 seconds, even faster than 1 minute.
Now, I've never, ever had a leader not nod their head to that and say, yes, I'm interested.
Of course, because they have to be aware that diversity and inclusion, if treated and managed properly, can, of course, increase the bottom line, right? Results.
Inclusion is the key. Yeah.
Yeah, inclusion is the key, because everybody can be more creative. You can have better solutions by working together, by listening to everybody, by including everybody's opinion and background and experiences. Of course, you can grow and you can find better solutions. And it's so obvious, but still many leaders don't see it because they don't admit they have unconscious bias, right?
Right.
They think they don't have. All right. Now moving to the next conference room. Now 10,000 people. They are all of them, all kinds of gender, all kinds of, right? They have to deal with this thing in our society. What would you tell them to give them hope, direction, inspiration? And because, many people play the victim all the time, right? I'm not saying they're wrong, but many people play the victim and they believe this is the best way to play.
Right.
But maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I believe that if you play the victim, you remain the victim, right? If you play the hero, or if you play someone strong and confident, you increase your chances to be heard. That's just my opinion. I don't know if I'm right. But let me see how you would address this 10,000 people that are struggling every day to be heard, to be listened to, and to feel included. All right, go.
So I know that you probably want to feel more included in your organization than you currently believe you are. So let's talk about the fact that fundamentally companies hire for diversity and manage for similarity. So you came in with high expectations that your diversity would be noticed. And right now it's possible that you're feeling that you're not being valued, that your voice is not being heard. But let's talk about what you can do to change that. Let's talk about use of self, because a lot of the time we blame other people. The leadership, for example, are to blame for the misery that I'm feeling. My boss is the problem. But what if you're the problem? What if you were to do the work on use of self first? That the issue starts with you, Don't look around to your right or your left. Don't blame the other people in the room for what's going on for you. Ask yourself, what is my contribution? What am I doing to help other people to feel included?
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, now you see this is like a sample of what a professional speaker, really expert in some topic, can do for the organization. She had like 30 seconds or 1 minute maximum. And I don't know if you have realized the power of this initial statement, right? So how can we change people's attitudes and behaviors so we find better solutions for our organizations? I would really like you guys listening to this, take notes about, no, go back, replay this entire episode if you want. Take notes about the perks, the golden nuggets we have um, been given here by Dr. Helen Turnbull, and how you can use them to grow, to evolve as a human being, as a leader, and make your organizations more effective and, of course, more welcoming to all kinds of people. Dr. Helen, please, it's clear for everybody now how wise you are and humble at the same time. That's why I love you, because you're wise and humble. Share with us 2 or 3 key lessons you have learned throughout your life that you believe made a very important and significant impact on your attitudes and behaviors.
Thank you, Fabio. I think one of the lessons really, when you said earlier, I'm from Brazil and I've experienced both things. I've experienced being the person everybody looks up to, and I've experienced not being listened to. I think I had that experience coming to another country, and it was very sobering. And so I think that I experience and know what it feels like to be excluded and what it feels like to be included. And I've never forgotten that lesson. I've never forgotten how it feels. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping groups to create more inclusion. I think the other piece is that that we've all, and I said it earlier though, is that we've all got biases. And so the idea that I'm bias free is just not true. With the result, that's maybe part of what creates that sense of humility in me, that I'm not a perfect human being. I'm going to make mistakes, not in the past, but going forward. And that you have to catch yourself and learn and grow from them. And I think the other piece is maybe more personal in the sense that it hurts when I don't feel included. And I'm aware of that. I don't think it was casual when I said to you, we teach what we want to learn. There are times in my life, even recently, where I don't feel I belong. And that's hard. And the fact that I can have that lived experience allows me to continue to have the passion. But, you know, when people say to me that they volunteer for something that they care about, there's a story there. I go back to what we were talking about at the beginning about not knowing people's stories. Why does somebody work for women in support of other women? Why do they do that? Why do they volunteer for breast cancer? Because they did, or somebody in their life had breast cancer. So so these are lessons that I've learned along the way. And I, you know, in my TED talk, I talked about getting on an airplane and panicking when I saw a female pilot, right? And it's these kind of stories that I think, oh gosh, Helen, do you still have work to do? So one of my lessons is to, you know, keep doing your work. This journey, you know, when people say to me, you know, can we stop talking about this diversity stuff now? It's gone too far. I'm like, this journey never ends. You continue to do the work. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Even before we gave this name, right, diversity and inclusion, there has always been a case, right? We are always dealing with differences, and we need to accept them. We need to be humble enough to learn from other people. We need to be really killing the arrogant human being we have inside of us every single time. And the more we study, the bigger the risk of believing you know enough, right? So the true student in my opinion, is the one that keeps learning, and the more he or she learns, the more he or she knows that there's still a long way to go, right?
Yeah.
So we need to continue humble, listening to people, trying to understand their stories, trying to kill that or eliminate or at least catch that unconscious bias that we all have, and be alert, because if you believe for 1 second that you are already good in that area, you're making a huge mistake, right?
Exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Dr. Helen, please tell us, maybe this is going to be a summary of our interview, maybe 1, 2, 3 steps, action steps people can take right now if they want to be more self-aware, if they want to grow more inclusive companies. What would be the 2 or 3 action steps they could take today if they want to start going through this better journey, let's say?
Yeah. So I think the first step is to do an inventory, be honest with yourself. I mean, I would start by saying, who do I exclude? What stories, what social narrative am I making up about my neighbors or some of my friends' or whatever? What are the groups that I speak negatively about? And what's that about for me? Did I learn it from my father? Did I learn it from somebody? Am I trying to comply to please other people? So do an honest inventory of where you're at with that. I think the other piece is be willing to read, be willing to attend diversity experiences, and have an open mind to these experiences rather than saying more of this, do we have to do it? And I think be curious and be quiet. You know, I think most people are appalling listeners. I watch groups, I watch people in conversation interrupt each other, or do the, you know, I say to you, how are you doing, Fabio? And you say, oh gosh, Helen, you know, my leg's been hurting today. And instead of saying, tell me more about what's going on, I say, oh, my leg's hurting too.
Yeah.
And off we go to the races. And you know instantly that I only used what you said to tell my own story. And so I think that part of inclusion and belonging is, do I feel heard? And I can only feel heard if you're quiet enough to listen to me. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I can testify to that. Dr. Helen is really, we're not perfect. Dr. Helen knows she's not perfect, but she really listens. And she's my friend, my dear friend for a while now. And I could see how caring she is when we have a problem to share with her, how good listener she is. She's really trying to understand what is behind our pain, our story. And I believe this is my main lesson that I learned from Dr. Helen. We really need to care enough to be quiet. We need to care about the other human being in front of you and be respectfully quiet and asking questions, allowing that person in front of you to express themselves to the full extent of their pain or their expectations. That's the only way you can really understand somebody else. That's the only way you can really respect somebody else, when you're willing to quietly listen and respect their story. Helen, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
you're most welcome, Fabio.
I love our conversations. You know that. You were probably one of the very first people when I got into the United States that I really felt connected with. I really felt like I was welcomed by you, you know, honestly. We had that immediate good connection and good vibes, right? You are a wonderful human being, and I really want more people to get to know your work, which is already very well known, but I want more people to get to know you and what you're doing. And I'm sure if more companies, more people in general would listen to you, read what, you know, your books, and really work with you, we would probably accelerate the process of evolving as human beings and understanding each other and treating each other with more respect, as we would like everybody to do, right? So if people want to get to know more your work, share with us your websites, And if I can share here also in the description of the video, your LinkedIn profile. Okay, how people can get in contact with you?
Right. So my website is humanfacets.com, and my contact information is there. I do have a LinkedIn profile. I think it's just linkedin.com/Helen Turnbull or Dr. Helen Turnbull.
I'll post
Yeah.
it here.
And these are the two best ways. Emailing me from my website is probably good. And my email is just Dr. Helen Turnbull at humanfacets.com. So my book is called The Illusion of Inclusion. And I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested in exploring doing this work.
Perfect. So once again, thank you so much. And everybody watching, this is Fabulous with Fabio. Our guest today was Dr. Helen Turnbull, true professional speaker and expert in this topic of diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias that can really make a difference in our story. I want to thank you once again, everybody watching. You can also listen to this interview later in our podcast, Powerful Insights for Business, and Spotify, Apple, and whatever. And here in YouTube channel, Fabio Marques 007, Fabio Marques 007, where you can find our talk show, Fabulous with Fabio. Ellen, once again, thank you so much. God bless you. Let's keep fighting. Let's keep making a difference in this planet, okay?
Thank you, Fabio. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.